Welcome back to What Really Matters with attorney Chris Fry. I'm Nick, your co-host, and I'm here with attorney Chris Fry. Chris, what's happening?
Oh, a lot actually.
Nothing, everything.
Nothing.
Man, crazy couple of days for you, huh?
Yes, lots of driving.
How was that, fun?
It was. I don't mind it. I had my daughter's graduation, which was very nice. And
Proud papa moment, huh?
yeah, they did it on a football field. They had the students and
They have them do a down and out for the diploma.
yeah, right. But initially it was set for Friday night, it's Florida, so you get rain. Well, this time it just continued for hours, so we sat out in the parking lot in the car for a few hours.
So listen, back in the day, for you guys down there, did they used to do it inside, right?
Yes.
Like at where Tampa Bay plays, or the hockey team?
It depends. I think some of the bigger high schools will do it in an outside forum. Most of them do it somewhere on their property.
Okay.
Well, if it's a school that has an actual stage, I mean, some of these schools have like Broadway, class stages,
Right.
and they'll have it, there, and it's a huge auditorium. But this year with the COVID, we were outside.
The COVID.
With COVID, we were out on they had the sets of three, spaced 6 feet apart, all the way across the field, and then across the field. So the podium was at the 50-yard line, looking sideways on the field, and they kind of filled up the seats from the center out.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, apparent from what I was told, a lot of kids had people that came Friday night, got rained out because of lightning. They couldn't let anyone on the field, and then after like 2.5 hours, they called it and said, "Well, come back at 11 tomorrow." And so now you're out in the Florida heat,
Right.
with getting smoked out on the field.
That's old school graduation. That's how I had it.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
on the
At
field?
our football field. Yep. 9:00 in the morning in July.
We were
June.
hoping for 9,
June.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think another school had some issues and they couldn't use the stadium, so
Right.
they were at 9, and we ended up at 11 because initially they had the students from the high school had the first shot at the field, and they were going to do it Friday night to clear it. So since it leapfrogged, they got stuck at 11.
Well, listen, at least you got to do it.
Yes, and very
surely
proud.
anything that you guys had to go through, it's a rite of passage.
Oh yeah. Well, it's funny because my daughter, her name is Karina with a K, and she had the opportunity, I think, on 4 occasions to wear. I said, "Well, at least you got your use out of the cap and gown," or it's because they had it had been rescheduled like 4 times.
Yeah.
And people started getting frustrated, and
Sure.
Friday night they were like, "We're done,"
Yeah.
And so,
Do you think some kids didn't show up?
Yes, I know some did not.
Okay.
Because there were some that were there. And basically, they couldn't go by any list. They had done RSVPs to figure out how many chairs there were. So I would say probably 2/3 of the people were not there. The center third was filled. So it was probably about maybe a dozen, 12 to 14 across.
In absentia.
Yeah, a couple hundred maybe out of 600, 550.
Wow. Well, at least
Yeah.
they made it quicker.
It did. And so they just basically gave them index cards, said write your name phonetically so we don't mispronounce it, and then just hand it to, I guess they lined up on a track and
There you go.
right up the stage, announced the name.
So no alphabetical
Click.
order, nor organization, just like show up.
Correct.
Here you go.
Yep. They just marched them out row by row. And
You think they'll implement that in the future?
let me tell you something. I've had 4 graduations now. It was actually,
They're onto something, right?
yeah. I mean, it was hot out on the field,
Yeah.
but they got the entirety done in an hour.
Yeah. There's
Mine was like 4.
There's no need to overcomplicate something,
Yes.
and I think that if COVID has brought some things to light, if there's a benefit, it's let's just have this and get this over with, or do we want to have it, or are we going to do this?
Yes.
And across like professional lines or personal lines,
absolutely.
It's been really interesting from that perspective, and how you approach a day.
Yes. Well, and the one thing I will say about it was that was kind of sad to me was that the kids, a lot of kids, they work so hard.
Yeah.
Karina she blew me away.
Yeah, right.
She was like
right.
a 4.8 GPA and summa cum laude, highest honors, and she was like ranked 11th in her class of 550, and she worked so hard and did all of these various groups and stuff, and they didn't have time to announce
their
stuff.
accolades and stuff
So,
like that. Yeah.
Basically,
But you graduated, and I can remember the last thing. I didn't go to graduation for me. I went to graduation for my parents.
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
and baccalaureate and all that stuff. It wasn't for me. I really didn't care. I
Yeah.
really didn't want to be there. Having to put the cap and gown on and go do this stuff was just like And then the photos afterwards and all that. I'm like
That's where the bulk of your time is spent. And then the one which was the formal photograph, they were going so fast that you didn't have time to get your cell phone cranked up because the Face ID didn't work because of the mask.
Yeah.
So like everyone's fumbling, and the next thing you know, there are kids walking off.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Yeah.
what happened?
Yeah, just take a picture of somebody else and say that's
Exactly.
you. Yeah, that's a shame.
But it was a good weekend. So
Good.
Yeah.
It goes by quick, doesn't it?
Oh my.
I can't believe it's been 5 years since my daughter graduated high school, and it's been over a year since she graduated college. So you just think like, man, it's crazy. It's unbelievable.
It's nuts.
Yeah. Baseball season started, Chris.
Yeah, and some of the games are not
happening.
Not happening.
Have you seen any? Have you watched a game with nobody in the stands yet?
I watched a little bit. Was it Milwaukee? I can't remember who was playing, but a little bit. And baseball is kind of one of those sports where you don't really know, like, unless it's like the playoffs, you don't really know
Right. There's
how
a lot
much
going on. It's a
the
long
fans
season.
play. I mean, I think the fans always play into it, but football or basketball, it seems to be more impact.
I would think so, but man, I mean, do you think home field advantage, you get to go up last, right? I mean, that's huge.
Yes.
Although I don't know that does the cheering really help in terms of I mean, you can certainly feel the energy
of
a stadium, like
I think it definitely helps. Having come from a quote baseball family, and it's just that if you've ever gone, like I used to go to the Devil Rays game, being from Tampa Bay,
the sauna, as I like to call it.
Yeah. And, the regular games, they would get a moderate crowd,
Sure.
Low to moderate, and everyone kind of chilled out in the seats and watched the game. Most people were talking.
Great cigar bar.
Right. Yeah, right. And then until a foul ball comes zinging past your head,
Right.
boom. Hits
Yeah.
the
Well,
seat next to you,
listen,
like,
how many people have we seen get hit because they're not paying attention to the game, right?
I caught a puck in the nose in my first Lightning game.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you
Nosebreakers.
throw your glove off and go fight?
I was actually, they were the best seats I ever had. I came down to sit down, crowd stood up, stick save over the glass, bang, hit me right in the nose. First shot on goal.
Wow.
I was laying down and bleeding like a stuck pig.
And that puck was stolen.
Yes. It sat on my shelf because I had the goalie had signed it and the player who taken a shot. And it sat on my shelf forever. And then when the Lightning made their first Stanley Cup Finals, I came in on Monday and the puck was gone.
Interesting.
Yes.
Nobody had interest in that puck the whole time until they made the playoffs.
Yep. I
That
was
stinks.
ticked because you can't replace that. So
Yeah. So
so at the baseball, I thought, if there's one sport that's probably as COVID friendly as it's going to get, it's probably baseball,
golf.
golf, or tennis, maybe.
Yeah.
Little.
But they shove tennis balls up their skirts.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
That doesn't sound right either,
No,
does it?
no.
And not everybody wears a skirt, shorts.
No, yeah,
But yeah, I would say golf and baseball. Outside of the pitchers maybe licking their fingers
Yeah.
and then the ball, which I guess could be something. Although I wonder if they have rules against that now, right?
I don't know because with certain substances they do.
Yeah, no, but I meant like actually now, like
Yeah,
like don't. I don't know.
spitters.
Yeah.
And those spitballs.
Well, it's we've already seen that. What was it? 13 Miami players tested positive after
Yes,
a
they
road
had a-
trip up to, was it Philadelphia? Yeah.
Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And they had to cancel the game.
Yeah, and then you got to wonder what are the long-term aspects of this, and how is baseball going to deal with this, because that's a huge tick off their roster. I mean, what do they bring up? Farm players? Or
That's what they're probably going to have to do. I guess
although they
kind of
don't
like an
have
injury.
the AAA and the AA, they're not playing. They're out of jobs right now, right? They're not playing at all.
To my knowledge, they're not playing a
Right.
season, and the major league, not only baseball but football, I think across the board, now they're starting to have other issues, that contract issues.
Oh well, we'll get to the NFL issues in
Yes.
just a second.
Some
And
really,
we see how, and we'll skip over to the NBA for a second. We see how they've implemented the bubble, right?
yes,
Over at Disney, and a couple of players have been disciplined for leaving the bubble, apparently. And so I think trying to police that is going to be really interesting. How they're going to handle it contractually.
it will.
I know that we were talking about the NFL. We read about the NFL a little bit and how they were talking, and nothing's solidified yet, which I find a little bizarre, that here we are a couple of weeks away from an alleged season starting, and they don't have these protocols in place about how if players go out to a restaurant with more than, I guess it's called risky behavior, right?
High risk
behavior. Like going to a nightclub indoors, going to a restaurant indoors that's crowded, the nightclub being crowded, going somewhere without just going to a house party with more than 10 people, going to a church service. Oddly enough, did you think that would be a high risk, situation? But
Yeah.
I guess they got to cover all bases.
Well, I think I had talked to, maybe you didn't, last weekend. Prior to her graduation, she had her last dance recital.
Yeah.
And it was held at a church, and they had a professional stage there. And they had spaced the rows out 6 feet apart.
But
the
everybody was
seat-
sitting next to
seats
one
were
another.
elbow to elbow.
And like you could
And that was packed.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? How, and everybody did have masks, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Everybody had masks.
Did they require them? Did they say?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Everybody there was.
Well, I
good and
asked because not
compliant.
every county. I was
No,
talking
I
to somebody
agree.
today that they said over in Volusia County,
No
you walk
masks.
into a restaurant, nobody's wearing masks, and I thought it was really interesting that, look at Sanford, because Sanford, the river is right there, right? And on
Right.
one side is Sanford, the other side is Deltona, DeBerry, and they said basically, on one side of the river you can go out to a restaurant and not wear anything, but on the other side of the river, you got to have a
Put your
mask.
mask on.
So it's like, you guys over there, I wasn't sure how it was happening. So it's been really bizarre how, even within a state, Orange County was certainly more stringent than we were initially. And then, you read some of these articles where Atlanta, like the governor and the mayor
The
are
big
in
cities-
issues and about like requiring a mask. And it's like, man, err on the side of caution. I mean,
Do what you're supposed to do. I mean, I don't like the mask. I'm not claustrophobic, but with the breathing into the mask,
Yeah.
after 10 or 15 minutes, it's very uncomfortable.
Well,
to
it
me.
certainly makes you a little bit more aware of your dental hygiene, doesn't
Yes,
it?
it does. And what you eat.
If you have halitosis, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been crazy.
The
and-
seafood lovers are having a rough
Oh
time.
man! Well, it's just crazy. It's crazy how, and we'll dip into consult here. How perfect is it to have an app that, with all these COVID situations, I mean, it's here. We talked about this the other day. Initially everybody had that 90-day plan or that 60-day plan. Well, now we're beyond
rolling
it,
up.
right? And things are not temporary, right? Now we've got to look at something down the road. We see it's certainly a prevalent topic in sports and how they're going to deal with it. And we look at football and say, like, man, maybe they didn't even think about this plan, but we're starting to see some of the articles on the ABA journals and stuff that we follow, regularly,
Right.
and how, COVID's still the narrative, and it's certainly affecting everything. And here we are. We have this app that's the solution. It really is a solution right now. We're throwing you a rope.
We've talked about it before, but the concept of Consult, was about 5 years ago. Production a little over a year ago, right?
Yep.
But COVID is here,
Yeah.
and you got to deal with it. I remember the press. There were a lot of articles at one point in time talking about the kind of bandwagoners, if you will, and jumping on and trying to using it to sell products and things, and they were some people took offense to it, were boycotting products and things like that. This product could be a lifesaver, literally, for a lot of firms, a lot of people who are in need legal help.
When you hear that, it sounds like you're embellishing, right?
I don't
But
think
really,
that's an
if you think about like elder law, right? You think about estate law, estate planning, right? We're giving you a tool that's huge in this environment.
Yes, the two biggest concerns with attorneys and attorney groups right now, the ABA, American Bar Association, are the inability or the virtual shutdown of in-person or face-to-face consultations and document and information sharing. And Consult is specifically designed from the beginning to address both of those problems.
Yep.
That's what it was created for, and to assist potential clients in finding and locating and speaking to an attorney as quickly as possible, and attorneys getting calls from the clients, which is our attorney on call, as we call it. And that also is a very important tool because it gives the people who are looking for an attorney, you can't just set appointments and go around now. And a lot of the offices are just empty. They have a skeleton crew, maybe a receptionist manning the phones at the front desk. Everybody else is at home.
Yeah, well, we called around. We called like 30, 40 firms and go, like, just to get a feel for like, hey, man, what's out there? What's happening right now? How are you doing business? Just to do some research for the show.
And frankly, some of them are not. And it's not by choice.
Correct.
They're having a really tough time.
Yep. Well, we see some of these larger law firms now, right? They got some PPP money. They we're like, okay, this is a Band-Aid, it's like putting Flex Seal, right, on something.
Yeah, Flex Seal.
Just to see if it's like going to hold. But, clearly the narrative is continuing, the days of, COVID's not going to be around in the summertime. Well,
wrong.
We see that that's already been disproven.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think we had mentioned this in the last show. It's now getting worse. With the government and Congress talking about a new multi-trillion-dollar package, and they're, almost, some would consider it yards apart, some would consider it a lifetime apart, but they're, quote, working on it. Although they're so polarized, it's difficult. And
it's
in an election
it's frustrating
year,
trying to read about what's happening because you get absolutely no sense.
Literally, they're running out of food and have no money, and their electric's getting shut off, and unemployment's about to hit the 90-day period, like you said, or has hit it, and they're expiring, and they're now starting to stockpile.
Right.
And
that's if you got anything initially.
Exactly.
It's referring to this state anyway, right? Because we've spoken about the inefficiencies in Florida's system. I mean, we were ranked 50th in efficiency.
About as inefficient as it comes.
Yeah, well, you get nowhere to go. I mean, if you're going to be glass of half full, you can say, I guess we've seen that there's signs for improvement in our system.
Yes, there have been.
But there's a lot of things that are happening now that are like really, really, it's bizarre. It's really bizarre. I mean, we're caught up in our daily lives here. You know, we come in, we do our things, we keep our head down. We're in production mode. We're, you know, getting things done. We're being creative. And I kind of feel like it's been a gift
It has
to
been.
kind of,
I said that the other day to somebody.
you know, I don't watch the news. I mean, I read, you know, we read, right? Typically it's law specific things that we read to try to find some sort of entertaining conversation. And we talk, you know, certainly about it. But I feel thankful that I haven't been stuck in a house, you know, for 90 days. You know,
sure.
with
The entire
you know, just
family's there. Everyone's
thinking
on top of each other.
Oh yeah, you know, I mean,
Air conditioning bills. I mean, with everybody in the house. You know, and again, with lower or no income.
yeah, Yep.
So people are having
yeah,
a difficult time.
yeah, and we're giving them the tool.
Yes.
We're giving them a fantastic tool. You know, and it's going to be crazy when things open up. You know, we're starting to see, we'll talk about here, you know, a hearing that they tried to have.
Oh my Lord.
And it's that voir dire hearing. And was that in California? I believe it was,
Yes,
wasn't it?
it was.
So they're doing a virtual voir dire. And Chris, you explain to us a little bit what that is.
Voir dire is basically the jury selection process. And generally, there are certain, it's the intention is to, and as we talked about before the show, it's really not a jury selection because it's not like a draft where you're saying, I want juror number 2 and I like juror number 11. It's basically a process of elimination, and judges do it differently. Some like to start on the right side, but usually they take the front row if it's a 6-juror panel or juror panel. They'll take numbers 1 through 6, and then the judge asks, as a group, certain questions aimed at weeding out, you know, biases, and that's what you're really trying to do. You're aiming to get 6 neutral, detached, fair and impartial. That's the standard, fair and impartial jurors, and obviously, it works. We always get juries.
Yeah.
You know, some people intentionally, and you can tell who they are, you know, try and get out of jury service. And other people will volunteer if they could.
Right.
You have court watchers, you know, they come into the courts and they look on the calendars and they see what the juries are for the day. And, you know, there are guys who are retired that do that every day of the week, you know, 5 days a week all year.
Come and hang out
go
and
and
get
watch
free air
juries,
conditioning
yeah.
at court.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like,
It's basically live TV, though,
it is
right?
live TV.
Yeah.
And if you have a couple of really dynamite lawyers, it's a show.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's, you know, it can be really entertaining.
Yeah.
Very interesting, too.
Well, apparently this voir dire hearing
That was very interesting.
was I would say entertaining, and from a reader's perspective, we had a person that was doing a elliptical machine during the hearing. My favorite was somebody was curled up in bed and they weren't sure if they were awake or not during parts of the hearing.
The stove.
Multiple people were on either a computer or another electronic device.
Yes.
Somebody walked away because they were cooking something. What else? Oh, people shuffling kids and animals in and out of the frame.
Yeah, herding them into
Yeah. So
distractions.
that's interesting from a attorney perspective. It's, I mean, as just an American with our court process, which is something that I would have taken very seriously, you know, if I was chosen to be a part of this voir dire hearing. For you as an attorney, what do you like? Do you just shake your head going, "I can't believe"? Like, it's almost like it's a Comedy Central skit, right?
It really
or
is.
SNL.
It's like, yeah, like Saturday Night Live, like just showing flashes of jurors doing like ridiculous things.
Right, like go do like whatever,
mowing the lawn or
yeah,
something, you know, with their ear pods in.
I got for
I
me
would
it was
say
Will
as-
Ferrell was on the elliptical machine,
Exactly, that's
right,
what-
with
with
his
the
belly
headband.
hanging out in the headband. Yeah, I totally. When I read the article in my head, I'm thinking to myself, "This is like it's like a Saturday Night Live skit." You know, you know, it's embarrassing.
It is embarrassing. I would say for the most part, because in my personal experience, and I've tried a lot of cases, I have full faith in the jury system. There are some jurors out there, I would say the vast minority, that are like that. But what this situation does, COVID, and we talked about this way back when we were discussing what are they going to do specifically with jury trials.
How are they going to start handling this, right?
How are you going to take a room full of people? Let's say the panels consist of 30 people.
And we spoke of actually this scenario specifically.
Yes. You got 30 people on 30 different screens, and how do you follow that? It's difficult enough when you're there in person, standing several feet away, live, and they can answer questions. You can kind of question them. Sometimes you can get a debate going amongst the jurors. That's what you want to do in voir dire. You want to get like people talking. That's your goal. When you start answering yes or no questions, it's like watching paint dry.
Yeah.
And the other counsel's going, "Oh my God."
Yeah.
But one thing I was going to say about the embarrassment portion, and I'm really afraid to say it, but not afraid to say it, is we're talking about jurors now. It's even worse to me when you have those hearings where the attorneys are doing
Well,
it.
we've touched on that. When
Yes.
this all started, May.
Yes,
May we talked
May.
about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
How, and we'll touch on it, and we've also always pointed out it's always Florida. Sure enough, we had these Zoom hearings with these judges where, I know specifically one was in a bathing suit with a cover-up, and the judge let her know that, look, I can still tell that you're wearing a bathing suit even though you have a cover-up. One of the attorneys showed up with no shirt on. One was in bed,
Right.
and had her computer and had her robe on, and was sitting in bed with the computer there.
Now, Florida, the heat indexes can be miserable down here, brutal. And so we understand that people, even in court, they dress more casually, we'll call it. But these are planned hearings, like really meticulously planned because of the difficulties that we're having. And you show up at the hearing sitting in bed, like wearing pajamas. What is that all about? What does that show prospective jurors who don't work in the system, how it goes?
How do you think the judge will rule? You think it's going to help your favor?
Well,
In your
someone
favor?
had filed, I think, a motion to strike the panel because they were, it was a big asbestos case, and
Yep.
and they were saying, there were too many distractions, too many things, and he cited them all. And it's really interesting because the other attorney said, "Nah, it was pretty smooth."
Well, there was one part where they muted.
Yes,
Was it one side or did they mute both sides?
there
on
were
the-
there were I think two attorneys where they, I don't know if it was I think it was accidental, but they muted them so they're like waving,
you'd like
trying
to
to
think it
object,
was
and they're just
accidental, yeah.
rolling through
Yeah.
like without noting the objections.
Yeah.
I mean, all of that is supposed to be in the record,
Right.
And when you have it, muted. You're not hearing it.
Yeah, what do you hold up, a flashcard? Like a hand, I
red
object.
flag. Yo.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's like it's surreal. We're talking about this and we're laughing, but this is real. I mean, I understand. We've been forced, right, as a society to make some decisions on the fly, right?
Oh, some.
Yeah, I mean,
Like many.
yeah. I mean,
absolutely.
the court system being one of them,
For some reason, the courts, I don't know if it's maybe because we're in that realm, but it seems to me like a lot of things that are happening in the court system. I'm sure like the education system as well is taking a beating.
if you make decisions, there will be lawsuits to follow.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So I guess maybe that's, and we know that there's going to be, I mean, how many COVID lawsuits are we going to seek?
Inundated.
Yeah. Well, and then everybody wants to make a decision, locally we're reading how the school districts or the governor is telling the school districts how to handle it. And we're seeing, I just read the other day, Orange County, the parents have got to say what they want their kids to do and how they want them, and think about high school athletics, how will that affect if you're a 5-star recruit.
I was going to say that before. It's awful.
Think about the
ramifications.
You're a 5-star recruit. You don't have a senior season, or you have the COVID. Are you going to be allowed to come back and play another year, or is it based on what you have, or if you're a junior? Imagine if you were a senior pitcher in high school and you didn't have a senior season, right, for baseball.
Right. I mean, they're either going to have to go on past experience, and they change considerably in 1 year.
Yeah.
Especially at that age.
Oh yeah.
And it would be horrible because you can't really judge what you have. My brother coaches college football, and he told
Has
me.
he shared any stories specifically?
Well, they're having considerable difficulties with recruiting because they can't have personal contact, and you're on the phone,
and you can't travel.
Can't travel. And they
Which
can't
is-
have camps. I think they just broke camp, and they're because the NCAA doesn't want to get pummeled like they did with March Madness
Right.
now with college football, and it's a sport that the entire country is waiting for the games to start. One of the things they're concerned about is that some of the smaller schools with fewer dollars that are playing large schools on the schedule are having to bail out or cancel the games, preseason, and they're kind of running them as they go to see how it goes, because the NCAA does have testing protocols that they have to meet, and a lot of the smaller schools are struggling with meeting those protocols and getting the paperwork.
NCAA should pick up the tab on that.
For the dollars, that's the billions of dollars involved.
Yeah.
They should be able to work something out
Yeah.
of that. Going back to, we were talking about the 5-star recruits. It reminded me we started to touch on the contracts with the with NFL and
Yep.
NBA and Major League Baseball, where those contracts are having containing these clauses about various clauses are at issue. One of which is if you have COVID and you can't play, is that considered an injury? Are you on injured reserve? Do you get paid for that game? All kinds of things. Do your statistics count? Who's going to shuffle all this around?
Yeah, well, I was reading specifically about the NFL today, and if somebody is reckless, there is if they show up and they play one game and then they cancel the year, everybody towards their pension will get that year credit, right?
Right.
As long as you played last year, or if you were drafted in this past draft, you'll get that credit for a year towards your career. However, if you are reckless, they say, and you test positive and they can prove, and that's, how are they going to prove you got COVID somewhere?
That is going to be the key issue.
And by the way, the Players Association is negotiating all this right now, right? Yeah. So there's nothing, I find it odd that we're on the eve of this scenario and there's still no plan in place. And,
well, and again,
and there's some word that they may not get paid if they test positive in a reckless scenario. Now,
right.
Proving that they got this from that scenario, I don't see how they're going to be able to prove it, which is going to open up a whole nother can of litigation, right?
Right. But it's kind of like when you talk about those injury clauses, and I had done some athlete agent work way back. You're talking about if somebody goes skydiving, or they're out on jet skis or Sea-Doos or what have you.
Basketball, if you're a football
crazy
player.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Sure. Anything where you are at an unreasonable risk of getting hurt and injuring yourself because it jeopardizes the entire team. And in these situations, I think a lot of them are going to be pretty easy calls, where I think what they'll do is they'll come up with some kind of a situation where they say, well, we don't have to prove where you got it or contracted it, because it could be through a mask,
Right.
In a parking lot somewhere. Nobody knows. That's part of the difficulty here. But if you put yourself in the position where we have a reasonable grounds to challenge your actions, I think that's what they're probably going to settle on. You
Yeah.
know, if somebody, like you said, is in a nightclub and,
But these guys are traveling through airports.
oh yeah,
You know, they're in just the airplane cockpit as it is. I mean, it may be a private jet, right? But those pilots are coming from somewhere.
exactly.
Your flight attendants are coming from somewhere, and I'm sure that they have protocols, right? But I mean, come on, man. You know as well as I do. It's
Well, nobody knows how you can contract it. I mean, they have a pretty good idea, but I mean, the percentages are overwhelming that people contract it from people who don't know they have it. They're
Right.
asymptomatic.
right.
So in those situations, clearly you can't tell whether or not somebody is risky unless they're
Yeah.
obviously showing overt signs, which you can avoid. But you're
What
right.
about an umpire arguing with a coach?
That's funny you say that because you're getting right up in somebody's face.
Well, is there a league
With
rule
or-
now that you can't?
There should be.
I mean, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I haven't seen that there's been any arguments, but it just came to mind.
Oh yeah, they're always like right up
Yeah.
barking in each other's face. I mean, primarily baseball.
Sure.
You know,
I mean, football players they
Yeah,
get
you
pretty.
see,
I mean,
yeah.
coaches get pretty boisterous, but I mean, you don't see them getting in the face of an ump like they would, or a ref like they would in baseball. It's a whole other type of arguing.
yeah, it's weird because the social distancing and the masks are going to have limited effect. I think it's something that everybody should partake in and do, not only for yourself but especially for others. That's what it's all about: is not getting others sick or putting
Sure.
them in jeopardy.
Sure.
Particularly the elderly
Right.
and
Yep.
the handicapped and people with difficulties that are in high risk groups. My dad had a little party at my sister's house, and I had come from last week to dance, and this week the graduation ceremony. Like we said, we don't know who they are. He turned 81. I'm not going over to that
Yeah,
house
right.
and put him at risk.
But we had talked about you going, and then I had thought about like the COVID thing, and
You did.
And I
You
thought
said,
to myself, I go,
I
Chris,
wouldn't do it.
I completely forgot about the COVID thing.
Yes.
I wouldn't go. I mean, it's hands down, it's a hard no.
Right, because I was picking up
Hard
my
no.
son to come
Yeah.
back here
No.
to visit, and we were going to swing past
Yeah.
the party on the way, and then it was like, oh man,
No, it's a FaceTime call.
yeah, definitely.
And if people don't understand or respect those scenarios, tough. I recently had a graduation party that I negated to go to, and they were over at my uncle's house, and sure enough, group picture, 20 people, nobody wearing masks, and, my uncle is immunocompromised, and I thought to myself, at least he should have been in a mask, like the whole time everybody was over there.
Right.
But no, and you just don't think, and
Correct.
and I guess they thought, oh, we know everybody and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you don't know, and I'm glad I didn't go, because if something, God forbid, happens to him, I at least know that I wasn't there, and I know that I did my part. And,
Right.
So from if something happens, you go to your dad's place, if somebody comes out of there sick, you don't know who brought it, right? And if something bad happens,
Sure, my sister is an airport supervisor at Tampa Airport.
would you been able to forgive yourself? No.
No.
But if you don't go, it's like one of those things. Like, so
I felt really
if you have
bad.
a cocktail and you drive, even if it's one, you're taking a risk. But if there's 100% chance that you won't get one if you stay home, then what do? You stay home, right? I mean, I've always kind of been like that odds guy,
Right.
If you can certainly reduce the odds, you reduce them by as much as you possibly can, And that's, I don't know. We see, and I think, everybody wants some normalcy. And I think that's where the struggle is right now.
Well, you look at the television, just watch the news. You've got,
No thanks.
yeah, exactly. You've got protests going on where there's mobs in the street all over each other,
Yeah.
physically and every other way.
What do we got, like 60 straight days?
I mean, forget about masks.
Portland, you
they're-
got like 60 days?
Oh, yeah. And so, I mean, what is a mask going to do in that scenario? Nothing. I mean, there's zero chance of it really doing anything effectively. And this is no commentary at all on their right to protest or how they're protesting. It's just being in a large group in a confined area, even an open area in those mass numbers, engaging in that kind of activity is inherently dangerous under the situation. So let's say even if you're a bystander and you contract it somehow and you leave and say, oh yeah, when I was in, such and such or so and so, I saw one of these demonstrations going on and, talking about it, you don't know what you've got, or you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. Well, that's the scary part, right?
Yes.
And that's and we're going to see this narrative continue, and we're
right
we're
now
seeing
they're
it in
starting
sports, right? It's
it's
very serious how and we're looking at this in terms of like the law industry, right? Where people have been putting Band-Aids on things, and now they're like, okay, well, we got to make some changes, right? And we're going to reduce our staff. I know the courts in California, there's not going to be any jury trials pushed back now until October. Bar exams, right? They're delaying bar exams. They're delaying.
Yeah, they're sending out notices now, for example, of board certification exams, all of those things, where they're allowing people to do it virtually. And a lot of people are just saying, I have to reset it. So they're letting you postpone it, and you don't have to go through the process again. But they're addressing it. And, we were talking before, but with the sports and the rules and not having a plan. And it appears that the plan is to play it by ear and wing it until we're there, and it's not working out real well.
Well, look at
team sports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and we're talking about billions of dollars.
Right. And everybody said, well, what if one guy gets it and the whole team gets it? I was like, well, what's the odds of that happen? When was the first day of baseball?
This past week, right?
Right. Yeah. Tuesday or Wednesday?
Yeah.
By Saturday and Sunday, you've got at least 2 teams canceling games because of 10 or more people who've contracted it at once. And
it's not like it's a 3-day thing.
No.
This could be like a 10 to 14 day, they want you to quarantine.
Right.
I know the NBA players, that the 2 of them, were disciplined for going outside the bubble. They have to quarantine now for 14 days. And I mean, dude, that's, talk about.
It's funny because talking about sports, because it's become such a huge sport. UFC.
Yeah.
My son and I were watching it, and I'm like, how, I'm trying to look at the screen, trying to figure out, they can't have crowds. I mean, talk about like contact sport, right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
It's full contact.
It is like, it doesn't get any fuller.
Right.
And he was telling me, I'm like, where are they? Is this in Vegas? And he's like, no, Abu Dhabi. I'm like, where's that? He's like, the UFC bought an island, and they have a facility on there and hotels on there where the only people on and off of the island are the fighters and their crews for the fights. And once they're done, they go in, they pack up, and they're off the island. So they bought an island and built a facility with the octagon in it to conduct the fights so they could televise it.
So they bring them in a couple weeks beforehand, right?
I'm not sure.
Or do they test them? They've got to be tested, obviously,
they come in,
right?
they're tested, and then they can go to their, I guess, sterile gyms, if you will, and then they stay, and that's where they work out. And then they have their rooms and whatever living quarters they have. And then they just stay in there separated until fight time, and then they come out their own individual entryways up to the ring, and they go from there and do their thing. And once they're done, they pack up, they're out, crew comes in, sterilizes it, next guy comes in for the next fight, and however much practice time they get.
That's pretty awesome.
I think it's only a couple days, but yeah, they bought an entire island. But you're talking about, think about what that takes. And planning ahead. This was not like something I don't think that they did, overnight. But somebody came up with it. It's a brilliant idea.
Oh, it's amazing.
You're talking about $1 billion business, right?
Well, it's essentially what the NBA is doing with the bubble.
Yes.
And the NBA, what a huge undertaking to do that, right? Like, what's it cost them? A couple $1 million a day, right? Millions of dollars a day.
Oh, yeah.
To do this. But there's a lot of money to be made, and it seems like the NBA has the right idea. Clearly, MLB is not getting off to a good start,
No.
and you hate to criticize, right? I mean,
I don't know if it's really a criticism as much as an observation. It's
Sure.
it is. Once again, it's one of these things where it just is what it is, and I don't really like that phrase, but it's in its place. I think it's appropriate.
yeah. Well, we look at, like I said, there's going to be some lawsuits, and we're going to see. I mean, if any of these players, get seriously, if it could ruin your career if it gets to pneumonia and lung scarring and any of that stuff.
Well, and then you understand why the law firms do what they did. I mean, imagine if you had a brush fire of COVID in your office. It wipes out your entire firm.
Yeah.
You're literally, you can't do anything. At least, and now I know with some people, because there was a kid at the graduation, as a matter of fact, and when we got back to our cars, he seemed like a nice kid. Daughter said, "Oh yeah, he was positive for COVID, but he was, on the lighter side. He didn't have, heavy symptoms."
How long ago?
I want to say it was June.
Okay.
And so he was clear, and he was at the ceremony. He was happy to be there because he was thinking, he was going to miss it. So, he was glad that he got to make his own graduation, which was a good thing, I think. But again, there's a lot of kids that can't or don't.
Yeah. Well, like you said,
A lot of kids who want to, and the parents won't let them.
Sure. Sure.
that-
Well, listen.
Sure.
We've we've been reading about parent shaming. About letting your kids go back to school or not letting your kids go back to school.
That's another
or,
tough call. They were talking another issue.
I mean, and again, we're going to see fallout. Then
Flu shots.
Oh yeah, we talked about that, right? Mandatory. Did they say what did
They're
you?
debating it. The doctors are basically erring on the side of caution, saying before they come back to school. And I think we had discussed this off air, which was with schools opening again. How are kids going to get physicals for sports? The doctors can't see everybody. I had a
Right.
doctor's appointment the other day. There were like 25 people in the waiting room, stocked up for 2.5 hours, to where they were going up voluntarily to the window and saying, "Reset my appointment, but I want to be on first on the list." And they were leaving, and the doctors are panicking. And talk about another area. We've actually had responses from the medical community about the app,
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, what we're using, they're only giving us 15 clients a day. I got 40. I
Yep.
need to see these people. They need medical attention, and I can't talk to them."
Right.
And not to mention, it's crushing their businesses too, which trickles down to the entire.
Well, that's when you get down to like you said, this app could save lives.
Yes.
And I know that sounds hyperbolic, but really, when you get down to it, and it could save your firm. I mean, communicating in a encrypted environment. We know some other communication systems that are not safe that people are using as the de facto go-to.
Sure. Because it's the only thing that's there right now.
Yeah. And, what's interesting, too, is in speaking to that, it was amazing to me that the ABA granted permission of that, so...
Readily.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is that a lot of these applications or software packages that are having issues are not made for legal services. They're not generated to be. I mean, all applications and everything in the computer and digital world, is encrypted in some form or another, but they're not designed specifically for use in the legal market. And so they don't take the precautions.
Let's
and then
face it, the two most policed or regulated industries are,
medicine, law.
and not
Hands down.
not in that order, right?
Yes, and the most expensive to deal with.
Yeah.
So you've got they also happen to be the two professions that probably, like you just said, are life and death situations. Criminal courts. People go to prison, they don't come out. There's as you noted, with the elderly, you don't know what's going to happen, no matter how good a shape you're in. You never know.
No, it's
My grandfather passed that way. We saw him like 2 days or 3 days prior, and we left. It was on a weekend, and then like a couple of days later, he went and mowed the lawn, came in. He was in great shape. Sat down and literally head hit the table, and it was like, what happened? So when you're sitting there and you need to talk to your lawyer, and you can't, and they're telling you, look, we're really trying, but we don't want to have you down here, particularly in that age bracket. It's such a delicate situation.
Especially if you're in a situation, an abuse situation, where, your partner,
right. All your possessions are in the house.
Yeah, it's a power thing, right? And you can't get out, right?
Right.
I mean,
so they file for these emergency injunctions, and you can't have a hearing. So what are we going to do? Or even talk to your lawyer about the options of what to do.
Right.
You got a telephone call, but how long can you stay on the phone? You've got calls building up. You can't see these people. You can't explain documents or review things. And with Consult, you can, because you can access documents, notes, tasks, calendars,
and look that person in the eye.
Right, while you're doing your video consultation.
Yeah.
I mean, the lawyers, we've hit sales right now, and in the first week, we had a huge law office sign us.
Yeah.
To actually build them their own app, and they're so.
We can't get into specifics just yet.
Right, exactly. So.
It's huge.
So they're chomping at the bit. Those, and one of the things that we've talked about numerous times with this like attorney on call, for the little guys who can't afford to buy their own app or have one developed for them, you can subscribe.
Well, not only that, but look at it this way.
Price.
Look at it like what they would have to pay in marketing to be seen.
Oh, yes. And so it's our pricing. We won't get into specifics. It's almost, I almost want to say dirt cheap.
It is
for what you're getting.
Well, no, for what you're getting, it's basically a law starter kit. It's the Swiss Army knife.
It is the Swiss
Army knife of legal apps, right? Or technology, right? It allows you to do pretty much everything, right?
Yes.
And not just like patchy everything. It allows you to do everything well.
Comprehensive. It's
dare we say robust?
Robust.
But it really is. And in these times, COVID or no COVID, this is an amazing piece of technology. It's been amazing to watch it be developed, right? To know the minutia of the app, right? And our thought process behind it. You were instrumental in a lot of those decisions.
Right.
Like, hey, what do you think of this? And what would you think in this scenario? And why would you do this in that scenario? And meticulous thought processes going behind what and why.
Oh, the development
how.
Was amazing from what it started as conceptually to what it's grown into. It's mind blowing because the tech guys go and they do their thing, and they still, we talk about it all the time. It like makes your head spin.
Yeah, well, when they're
so
like, hey,
cool.
wait, we need to do this, and then they'll go in there and they'll put it on the big screen, and you see everything. It's like I freeze. I'm like, ugh.
It's like,
just the little things, just
Yeah, and
because a dot isn't there, or something isn't doing this, or something did that, but we
bug
wanted to do something different, right? Or polishing something. It's like, it's amazing. It really is.
It really is.
And like we say, not to I mean, COVID is a narrative that's not going anywhere, and we see that. We see everybody adjusting on the fly to it, right? Major sports, right? Industry, like restaurant industry, how they're handling things. Shipping.
Things you don't think of.
Mail.
Yeah.
My brother works for FedEx.
Yeah, my daughter's boyfriend works for Union Pacific Railway. He's been out of work.
Yeah.
They just called him back. He was giving me the numbers on how much freight has not been shipped. It's
like backlogged,
it's incredible.
like months, right?
Yeah, like astounding numbers. I think they do it in tonnage or something like that, and how many cars and things, and how many have been shut down and not ready to run, and all of this product is sitting in these warehouses or in the rail cars, going nowhere.
Oh.
And
He's going to be
companies
working
like
some
our
overtime.
warehouses are. You're
Yeah.
killing us here,
Yeah.
you know. Manufacturing and imagine steel waiting for coal cars to come, and they're parked in a lot.
Yeah, I
Or
never
even
thought
a
of
lot
any.
that's
You don't even
creative.
think. You don't even
No.
think of any of that.
So
you know?
everybody's in their own little world, and not to say that it, facetiously, or in a negative tone, but everybody's got their own set of individual problems in their world, and you don't even see what else is going on and the extensive spread
stuff
of it.
that's not even being covered, like on news.
Yes,
right. Like
exactly.
stuff that's not even like because obviously we're focusing on the deaths, the sicknesses,
Sure.
stuff
Well,
like
they've seen the
that. But,
storefronts and they're saying-
vaccinations, right?
You know?
But
yeah, the stores are shut down, and people can't come in, and the products are sitting on the shelves in the poor stores. It's like, well, those products come from manufacturers. The manufacturers need, whatever,
yep.
materials they need to build their products, and it trickles on down the line all the way to the guys who mine the minerals or whatever it is for your product, right up through the
But look
whole
at
process.
frozen foods, right? Processed foods versus fresh foods. We've talked about the ripple.
How much food has probably gone to waste or spoiled?
Well, I can tell you that food pantries are overflowing because a lot of the fresh produce and the produce farmers are taking a huge hit, specifically in this state, because people don't want the fresh. They want the frozen because they think
Safe.
that's safer, right? So Publix has been amazing with trying to find distribution
Publix is really amazing.
lanes.
With just about everything.
Yeah, well, they've put everybody out of business.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother conversation. But
Right.
give them credit where due. Credit is due. Is they've tried to help out the local farmers in setting up other avenues for these local farmers to get their product out. A bunch of milk has spoiled.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
We've read about that. We've read about. Or we talked about all that stuff, and it's been crazy, yeah, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on, and getting back to Consult, we feel very proud of the product that we have. Not to use the Consult as a, excuse, but we really do have a tool that is amazing for where we're at.
It's perfect for where we're at as far as solutions go.
Yeah. Long term too, though.
Yes.
Not just short term.
Yeah, I mean, like we're sitting here talking, quote, face to face. Imagine we were doing this with, blinds put between us,
Right.
That's the difference between telephone and
Oh, yeah.
video communication.
it's
and ours is high definition. It's
Oh,
actually, it almost looks like it's 3D.
Yeah.
It's that clear.
voice inflection,
Oh.
right? Facial expressions, things that really matter, especially in that world, right? In the
Yes.
legal world. We're going to get out of here Wednesday. We got an enterprise show coming up. We're going
Yes.
to discuss the Consult Enterprise version. I think we're probably going to spend the majority of the evening discussing that. Chris and I'll be back Wednesday. We'll be back Friday. We'll be back next Monday
Yes.
with What Really Matters with attorney Chris Fry. Everybody have a great week. Be safe. Chris,
Good night.
everybody
And
have a good one, guys.